Now, my What the Farage moment with Australia over the weekend wasn't that Novak Djokovic was deported. I thought he was going to be. You see, ultimately, Tennis Australia and Victoria State were overruled by the federal authorities. What was astonishing, on behalf of Minister Hawke, the immigration minister, who does have sweeping powers, and by the way, I support strong borders, of course I do, but this wasn't about borders. No, one of the arguments put by his lawyers was there was a danger that if Djokovic stayed in Australia, that he would be a danger to public health. Well, him himself directly, obviously that would be a laughable idea. But it was said he could become an icon for freedom of choice. And that apparently, in modern day, authoritarian Australia is a bad thing. People are not to have freedom of choice. And their stats on vaccinations are pretty amazing. 92.6% of people are fully vaccinated. So we're dealing here with one of the most vaccinated countries in the world. Well, they've locked themselves away, they've locked themselves down, they've got themselves fully vaxxed, and yet there were 55,000 new cases of COVID in the last 24 hours. So it doesn't really seem to be working. But an indication of the kind of country Australia's becoming comes particularly in Western Australia. The Premier there, Mark McGowan, appears to be totally out of control, completely drunk with power as he pursues an impossible COVID-0 policy. He's told people that new rules and restrictions will be in place for years, and he's announced that Western Australians not vaccinated against COVID will be banned from nearly every activity outside their home from the 31st of January. And it's this I've been warning against for the last 3 months here on GB News. It is the idea that we relegate millions of people in our countries in a sort of modern-day, updated form of apartheid to being second-class citizens. Australia is becoming rapidly an authoritarian, and I'm sad to say, rather unpleasant place. Now, one place that has locked down, and did so before Christmas, was the Netherlands. Mark Rutte locking the country down, and very interesting what's been happening there over the weekend. There have been, over the weekend, very large-scale protests taking place in Dutch cities. Here is just one of them. And quite significant numbers of people turning up at these protests. But more significantly, in major cities all over the Netherlands, dozens of bar owners, cafe owners, or the Dutch equivalent of publicans, have literally ignored the government's closure orders, and people have turned up and they've been eating, drinking, and making merry. I sense the fact that the police chose, over the weekend, not to enforce the law against these bars, against these restaurants, against these clubs, says something. It says the Dutch have had enough of the Prime Minister locking them down. And none of this, whether it's getting jabbed 2, 3, 4 times or locking people down, destroying lives, none of this stops people from catching the virus, a point that I keep endlessly making. Not everybody, I know, wants to hear it. And my final What the Farage, an academic bias report by Legatum, who interestingly are investors in GB News, shows some pretty amazing statistics when it comes to university lecturers and university professors. And just have a look at that graph. Just have a look at those that are left of centre, are very left of centre, and now look at those who would give our youngsters a more conservative view of the world. And it explains the sheer level of indoctrination that our young people are going through. I bet all of you know somebody in your family or a close friend's family where their son and daughter have come back from university being virtually different people. Something has got to be done with further education. It really has.